Today I am joined by A-League cult icon Rashid Mahazi. Thank you so much for joining me today, Rashid.
That's all right. Cold icon. That's an interesting way to put it. But yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Well, I think that's true considering the reaction I get whenever your name's mentioned. People just love you, man. But we'll start with my first question that I like to ask people. Just where did the passion and love for football first begin for you?
Probably in the backyard with my dad and my older brother. Um, I've got a pretty bad memory, but the earliest memory that I have is probably I don't think I can think of an earlier memory than playing 2v1 in the backyard of my childhood home with me and my dad versus my older brother. So that's probably where it started. My dad was a goalkeeper. My brother had obviously already started playing. He's 3 years older than me. Yeah, so I guess they sort of fed it to me and then just grew.
And when you're a kid, playing football in the backyard, who were your sort of idols that you tried to replicate the moves in the backyard and that you loved to watch on TV, if you had any?
Oh, good question, man. I guess they sort of changed over time, and they also changed as I changed positions because I changed positions quite a bit through my life. I actually started as more as like a winger. Sorry, no, I actually started as centre back, but then went to like a winger for most of my juniors, and then went to defensive midfield when I was over in Argentina. But I my initial love of the game, it's an interesting one. My initial love of the game, probably like everyone, is more the wingers, the attacking midfielders, the exciting players. Um, and and I really loved players that looked sort of really relaxed and smooth when they played. So I liked, Raquelme, Zidane, Robinho, like these really smooth kind of movers. And I tried to emulate them. And then as I went to, I guess, defensive midfield, I went to sort of Sergio Busquets as like maybe a favorite, but there was another one in there that I've got a photo of when I'm a kid. I think I'm playing at Richmond at the time. I'm like taking a free kick and I'm wearing number 44. Is it 44? I can't even remember the number now. Might even be 22. I'm getting mixed up, but it's whatever Nakamura's number was back in the day. I'm wearing that top, and because me and my mate Jake Bucketash, we used to love him, and we used to like watch videos of his free kicks and like his skills and stuff like that, and then ended up playing against him, marking him when we played Champions League. So that was cool.
Now, you just mentioned a couple of footballers and a couple of South American footballers, and I'm sure you probably know where I'm going with this, but there's a really big name on your CV, and that's absolutely iconic club, River Plate. So how did that move come? How did you end up at River Plate?
So I was at an academy here in Melbourne called River Plate Academy that was had some kind of affiliation with River Plate Argentina, run by a guy named Daniel Santamil at the time. And then there was a few of us that he sort of, I guess, thought were ready to go over there and could, I guess, compete and trial and see how he went. So we went over sort of for a training camp, but also for trialing and trying to see whether we'd able to get a deal or something like that. So that's how that came about. We went over to River for a period. There was some back and forward for a while there, stayed there for a period, came back, went over again for a period, came back, went over for a period, bit of that. And then we went on to Independiente from there, which was, that was connected we were at Rowville, me and my mate Chris Kiosis were at Rowville Sports Academy. Stuart Munro was there as the head coach, and he knew an agent over in Argentina when we were there, and he said, I can link you up with her and she can organise some trials at some other clubs and as well. So we went and did that, and then ended up signing there and staying for another 2 or so years.
And what was your personal experience at these clubs like River Plate and Independiente? I know that even if you play for the youth team or even if you just wear the training gear, sometimes you're seen as just like a hero for doing that. And these clubs have passionate
Mm.
fans and big history and everything. So what was it like? What was the training facilities like? And were you overwhelmed at all knowing, these clubs are massive and people live and die literally on the results of these teams?
It's just another world, isn't it? Like the the level of passion for the team and the sport is just night and day to what we have here. And so it was cool being a young kid, being able to learn that, because you come back and okay, you're playing professional here, but some things you probably would have taken for granted if if you were if you didn't have that experience of seeing what football actually means to some people. Um, so that was really cool, and we were actually talking about it the other day. Though, like, it's also justified. Like the players that are at River Plate, even just in the youth team, it doesn't even necessarily need to be like the first team or the reserves. Like even just in the age groups are unbelievable. And so being able to play against those guys all day, every day was awesome. And it's quite funny, like some people probably have the perception of like, oh, you're a professional athlete, then oh, you probably go out and people love you and people want to talk to you and get autographs and girls like you and this kind of thing. When in Australia, even if you're playing like first team in Melbourne Victory, like people know you a little bit here and there. And if you say you play Victory, it's kind of cool. But like if you're even just in the under 15s at River Plate, like I can guarantee you, every girl that sees you is going to be like, "Oh my god, wanting to talk to you," and people are going to want to like, "Oh, meet my son," and whatever, this and that. So even if it's just you're in the youth team, it's just like the passion is amazing.
Coming back to Australia, you played NPL for a little bit. And I know there's usually a little bit of a step up from when people play youth football to senior football. And some people really find the transition really tough. So were you in that same category, or did the experiences overseas and everything kind of help you step up into this senior football, even if it was semi-professional?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. I guess a big part of it is like general maturity, right? Like you have your footballing maturity, but you can't completely separate that from your day-to-day maturity. And I think being over in Argentina, I grew up like when however long I was there, three years or whatever. Um, that amount of time was probably the equivalent of like 6 or 7 years here in Australia. Just like having to do everything for ourselves, cook, clean, having to be really, really like aware of our surroundings at all times, because it's a bit of a dangerous like country and city, Buenos Aires. Um, yeah, I think and then obviously being out of your depth, that makes you grow just 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 because of being uncomfortable. Being around guys that are really serious about their football and really serious about beating you makes you just have to like grow and be strong, like be like a strong personality in difficult situations, I guess. And so I think that I came back with a lot of confidence in myself, but and belief that okay, I can play professional in Australia. Like if I've done this in Argentina, I can play professional in Australia. I had that belief in myself, but also I think I was more mature. I was more confident in speaking on the field. I mean, I was more confident to be a leader with my actions. Um, yeah, so I think that helped me. I don't remember feeling uncomfortable too much. I also was lucky because the team that I went into, I guess sort of stars all aligned. The team that I went into, I had a really close friend, Adrian Chipetta, that took me to and from trainings every day and games. He was the captain at the time of the team, and so that helped because I had a really really close relationship. He actually came to Argentina with me as well, so I had a really close relationship with the captain of the team, who's the most important player on the field. So it was like I was welcome in that changing rooms on the field straight away. I had a bit of respect because I'm with this guy, you know. So that was a bit of it, and then also the other boys in the team. There was a lot of young players and a lot of people that was sort of just coming into MPL, or it wasn't an environment where, yeah, and I guess just the personalities as well. It was a welcoming environment. All the boys were good and had a laugh, and we had a really good team night out. People from Northcote will know what I'm talking about this start of the season, and that really bonded us. From the preseason, and I was lucky. I felt comfortable with them, and I felt comfortable in the league as well. So yeah, I didn't remember that.
Now with Melbourne Victory, who, you know, we don't have to beat around the bush. They're probably the biggest followed club in the ALeague, probably the biggest club in the ALeague, if I'm honest. When you signed for him, there was another big manager there called Ange Postecoglou, who, if I'm not wrong, he left pretty much a few weeks after signing you. So being this young player, signing a contract with a manager, and then all of a sudden having the manager leave, how did that make you feel, you know, at the very start of your professional career?
I wasn't too phased. I was never the kind of, I don't know if I've ever been the kind of player that's has a close personal relationship with his head coach. Now, in saying that, I've always had. I don't know why that is. I've just sort of noticed that's the case. Like, in saying that, I've been always really close with the other coaches, whether it's assistant, strength conditioning, whatever. But something in me never made me feel like, oh, I should be trying to have a really close personal relationship with the head coach. And I assume a lot of head coaches are probably thinking the same thing. They probably it's a tactical thing that they don't want to have a close personal relationship with their player. It's, you know, I'm assuming Ange is like that somewhat. If you've heard, I'm sure I'm not the first one to say that I probably had one or two conversations with him the whole time he was there. And people don't know this, but I was actually training with the team, with Victory, for a long time before I signed, because I came in and did a trial. It was like a one week trial or two. I can't remember the exact details, but it was 1 or 2 week trial. And Ange, at the end of that, told me, I'm going to sign you. But then from that conversation to actually signing was a long time, because there was some issues with the Argentinian club wanting some compensation. There was stuff going on with the paperwork. So I was there with him for more than 3 or 4 weeks. So I was around him enough to realize that, okay, this he's a unique character, and there's not much of a personal relationship here. In saying that, he knew how to get the best out of people in his own way. I don't know how to explain it, but something about the seriousness of him, the intensity of him and his personality, the way you knew that if you didn't do what he wanted, he would really come after you. But say he gave me my debut, and I felt super comfortable based off, he said like 3 or 4 words to me. Basically just said, oh, you know, all right, boys, Rashid's going to make his debut tonight. You'll be right, son. Like, he didn't, you come up to me and say, oh, you know, you need to do this. It just felt to me like, from his demeanor, like, I trust you, you're right. I don't need to say anything else, kind of thing. And that gave me confidence. It made me feel like I was relaxed going into the game. But Muskie was also there. Muskie was already there. And a lot of the correspondence, because I wasn't really speaking to Ange, no one really did. So I would be speaking to Muskie at the time. So then when he took over, I already knew him. He was playing a similar way. Nothing too much changed.
You just mentioned your professional debut, which, you know, is the pinnacle for any young player. Whether or not you're good or not, everyone wants to be a professional footballer. And when you first stepped onto the pitch as a professional, it was actually in a pretty big match, a Melbourne derby. You know, they usually have a pretty full house, passionate fans, the Melbourne Heart fans actually turn up for once. And um, what was it like being a player? You know, you're thrown into your professional debut and it's a derby match. Did you think that helped you overcome all the nerves, considering, you know, most of the eyes weren't exactly on you? Or do you think it had the opposite effect, going into a game with, you know, full house, bit of passion, a lot more intensity than what the typical A-League match usually would have?
I think there was an element of like just thinking, fuck, this is really cool, that made it a bit more like, I obviously really wanted to play well and I was nervous and everything like that. But there was also the element of like, this is also really cool. So regardless of what happens with my individual performance, it's cool that I got to do this. Like Harry Kills over there, you know what I mean? Like Archie is here. Like, wait, was Archie there? Anyways, I've been training with him for a few weeks, you know, at that time, and it was just like, yeah, there's these there's my childhood heroes are standing around me, and I'm in these like this really cool environment. It's sort of like that feeling of, oh, I got there. I got to, after everything I went through and blah blah, and thinking I wasn't going to make it and blah blah blah. There's this like one, like you said, a pinnacle moment where it's like, oh, this is it. So there was an element of like just wanting to enjoy myself and just like take in the experience. Because I do remember that the feeling of like after that game, there was a difference in the weeks after that of like feeling a bit more pressure, where it was like, this is now like, it's not about him just enjoying this experience. Like, I've got to perform. Like, this is just about performing and like getting myself to whatever the next step might be, whether it's playing regularly or whatever, like winning the game, all that kind of stuff.
So you just mentioned like after your debut, you had the pressure now to perform on yourself. But for your actual debut, do you remember how you played? And personally, how do you rate your performance?
Like I said, I've got a really bad memory. But I think I played all right, from memory. I do remember getting a corky in my hip from Kill, actually. But no, I don't remember the game too clearly. Like, you know, I guess you want to remember that experience, but I don't remember that game too clearly. But I do remember that I started that season well. So I'm assuming that was part of it. Like, I remember the first few games that I played, I started well, and I felt like I made myself feel comfortable early on. I guess I was lucky to play those decent games at the start to feel like, oh, I can play at this level, because potentially it's harder to feel like you belong if you start off really poorly, you know.
And obviously, Melbourne Victory, they're a big club. They usually recruit pretty big players. And in your position, to be honest, they were pretty stacked. They had Milligan, they had Finkler, like the whole midfield just had class players all around. So for you being a young player, trying to break through, having all these players, you know, around you, how difficult did you find that? I know you said that they earlier on they kind of helped you with training and stuff, but did it get a bit frustrating not at times, knowing, you know, you got pretty much a Socceroo that's in a position you play in, and you got this really good player in another position, and you know it might make it a bit more difficult than it would be at another club?
I guess, yeah. In some ways, like everyone wants to play, but I think I got a decent amount of games in that first season that I like going in. When I signed, I remember people saying about me or to me even that like, oh, okay, like you've signed, but heaps of people sign, like you won't play a game or you won't play more than 5 games or whatever. So I think I came in with this idea that, oh, I just want to like, I think I had a goal of like playing 10 games or something like that first season. And I had hit it way before the end of the season. So I think I had already I was sort of happy with what I had achieved in the first season, especially because of my background with, I guess I had like a bit of a imposter syndrome kind of thing going on because I had never played at any state league, like I never played any for state teams or rep teams or VIS or AIS or any of that, young Joeys, none of that. So all the other players that were around me, all the other Australian players had all played through those systems. And there was all players that I had looked at and had felt like, oh, I wish I was doing what they're doing. I wish I was playing at the level they're playing at, that kind of thing. And like a good example is Jimmy Jago was in the team at the time. And I had gone through the youth. We had obviously the same age and had gone to the similar trials and these kinds of things. And Jimmy had done really well. He'd played VIS and all that kind of stuff. And I had heard about him being at Victory for a long time. And so I knew of him. And then all of a sudden, okay, I've gone a roundabout way and we've ended up, because we were close friends when we do the trials and stuff. And we ended up back at the same place, same position also, you know. And so, yeah, I felt like I did all right in considering, you know, and I was happy with that. But then at the same time, I genuinely felt like I should be playing. Like that's where my head was at, was like, oh, I'm good enough, I should be starting. At the time, I think Roxy and Millsy were the regulars. And then Millsy would go away with the Australian team sometimes. So then it would be me and Brox. But yeah, I guess most players probably think they should be playing, but that's what I had. I genuinely felt that, even though I knew all the boys were great players. Like Broxy, I mean, Millsy goes without saying, but probably Broxy doesn't get as much credit for how good he actually is. So it wasn't an easy team to get into, especially at that time, but I felt like I should be in it.
And with a side like Melbourne Victory, who usually are finishing towards the top of the table, that also comes with things like finals football and Asian Champions League and all that sort of thing. And just on Asia, a lot of players have kind of told me that when they go over there and play ACL, they're blown away a bit at how crazy it all sort of is playing this, you know, international competition. So for you, was that your experience? What did you think of the Asian Champions League? And do you think that it's a bit of a hindrance for Australian sides having it where it's not really seen as a bit of a priority? So sometimes sides send like their youth teams and their B string teams and they don't do really well. So yeah, what's your experience overall with the ACL?
Well, it's hard because, I don't want to say, I'm careful to say they shouldn't be playing the young boys, because that was what I was going to say, is that for all us young boys at that time, it was an opportunity to play games. So it was awesome because there was more games in the season. If it had just been the ALeague, probably wouldn't have got an opportunity to play anywhere near as many games as, especially at Victory, because we were always in the ACL. The experience in Asia is awesome. It's like you get to travel with the team, you get to feel like a real pro. You know, you're in the hotel all day and with the team, and then going to these cool stadiums with crazy fans and eating different food and blah, blah. So obviously you've also get the opportunity to play against some really top players. You know, if you get a team from China, they might have 2 or 3 players that are top professionals from, you know, even top 4 teams around the world. I think Diamante was at, when we first played, was it Shanghai or something like that? He was there. So, you know, you get the odd, and Nakamura, like I told you before, I got the opportunity to play against a literal childhood hero that I absolutely loved, and I got to mark him. So, Asia was an awesome experience, especially early on, being a young boy.
And with Melbourne Victory and just football in general, being a professional football player, unfortunately, sometimes fans, particularly the ones who, you know, are passionate and like love the club, or so they say. Sometimes they can take it a bit far with the support if you have a bad game or the team doesn't perform well. So being a young player kind of coming into this professional setup where all of a sudden you're on display for a bunch of people and there's a bunch of people sometimes taking it a bit too far. What's that like? How's that like? How hard is that to deal with mentally, knowing that these complete strangers sometimes maybe even just write you off before you've even played, or even if you feel like you've played a good game, sometimes players will still sometimes fans will still criticize harshly. How hard is that mentally to overcome?
Yeah, it's hard. It's difficult, especially because it's about something that you really care about. Like you really want to be playing well. But I felt like it was equally as difficult just when my dad would watch me play. So I don't know if that's some complex that's come from then or whatever, but I remember it being equally as difficult then. But in saying that, like I said to you sort of beforehand, yeah, I'm very careful to say like, oh, it shouldn't be that way, because I know that those kinds of things made me want to be better, made me want to train more, made me want to be at my best, and like that fear of failure sort of drove me. So it's a really hard thing to pass out and to say, oh, it should be like this or it shouldn't be like that, because definitely like personal things, when they're unrelated to football, that's crossing the line, definitely. But if it's stuff related to your game and someone's telling you didn't play well, I guess it's the same thing as if you're in training and you take a bad touch and one of the boys gets on your back and goes, fuck's sake, wake up. It's the same thing, like, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what I think about it. Yeah.
Now, after your spell with Victory, you had a little bit of a break from the professional game, playing with Moreland Zebras, and then you come back to Western Sydney Wanderers. And I don't know if this was just me personally, but I felt like personally during your Wanderers stint, you played some of the best football I've seen you played. You looked more refreshed. It looked like you found a love for football again. So do you feel like that little break you had going back to NPL, sort of semi-pro football, kind of re-energized you a little bit and re-energized your love for football?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Oh, I loved playing the NPL at that time. We had a really good group, both like on and off the field, and I got to develop in a different way because I went there and I was the captain, and so I had to sort of become a captain, and then I think I took that into my Wanderers stint. And I think one of the big things with what happened at Wanderers was, or one of the big differences, which was something that I took a while to learn. And I guess fair enough, if you're like, basically you're a kid and you think everything the coach tells you to do or how the coach wants you to play, you have to do. And to some extent, that's right. But I guess tactically that's right. But in terms of technically, there was things that I was being taught and ways that I was being asked to play that I don't think suited me at certain times through my career. I'm not talking about just at Victory, but I'm just talking about in general. Like whenever I was playing in different places, there was things that were being told to me that I should do that didn't suit the way I actually like to play. And I think when I went back to the NPL at that time and being confident that, okay, I can play how I want here because I'm the one coming down from the ALeague, so I can play how I want. And I sort of really came into understanding who I am as a player individually, how I play, what works best for me. And that self-awareness, people talk about it just being maturity, right? And I remember I used to speak to Tarek about it, and Tarek used to say, watch, bro, you'll play your best football at about 28 years old. And I think that's the difference between a young kid, because a young kid's watching players on the TV and thinking, want to play like him, I want to play like him, I want to play like her, whatever, right? But and they've also got a coach in their ear telling them a way to play, how they receive the ball like this, pass the ball like this, scan like this, doing all these things. But for their body, for their mind, it might not be right. And yeah, I think at that older age group, just by a byproduct of just like being more comfortable in yourself, and being around yourself more, actually, no, that doesn't work for me. This works for me. Actually, no, that doesn't work for me. This works for me. And I think that was really the case for me. At Wanderers, I felt like, okay, this is how I play. I want to control the ball with the sole of my foot. I don't want to use the inside of my foot. Like the little things that really helped me and made me feel more comfortable.
So when you first left Victory and dropped down to NPL with Moreland, was it always the goal to work your way back up to the A-League and play professional football again? Or at that stage, were you kind of just looking at it like, okay, I played for Victory, I've won a couple of championships, and I just want to relax and enjoy life now?
Nah, it was always, I had left with the idea that it would be a year off. It's a hard one because I knew that having a year off meant that, like, it's possible that I'd never play professionally again, because it's not like, I don't know, playing music where you could just have a year off and then come back and people are going to allow that, So yeah, it was always a year off, and then I'll just cross that bridge when it comes to it if I can't get back into it. So yeah, definitely the idea was to go back and play professionally.
Did you find that any clubs like Wanderers or anything had any hesitancy to sign you, considering, you had this year off, or was there just no issues at all? Did you have clubs kind of chasing you down even when you were playing NPL, even before you joined the NPL?
No. I didn't have clubs chasing me down. No, pretty sure I had a decent season at Moreland. And then how did it go about doing it? That's right. So I messaged my friend Danny Georgievsky, because when I had left Victory that season, I had a few offers, and one of them that came through was through Tony Rellis, and it was Western Sydney. I think it was Popper at the time, and then. Oh, all right. It was Popper at the time. Just trying to remember. I'm just trying to get the memory back of what the sequence of events was. But yeah, so I messaged Danny and I said, "Oh, can I get Tony Rellis's contact?" Because I remember he'd shown interest in me and said, believed in me and he thought I was a good player and this and that. So I messaged him saying, is there any way of, like, can you help me out in any way? Actually, no. So I ended up, first I got a trial from Perth. Who was there? I can't remember how I got it. And Kenny was the coach. I can't remember how I got that trial. Thought I did all right, but then and thought that Kenny was going to sign me, but then it was like Kenny was going to leave and all this sort of happened. I'm not sure. I never found out really what happened with that. Maybe they just didn't rate me. I don't know. And then I got a trial at Central Coast from Tony Rellis. He sort of set that up for me. And then I'd gone. Got the call to go to Western Sydney through JP John Paul Di Marigi. I don't know how to say his name, but he was there. He was the assistant coach at the time, and he knew me, and so I don't think there was much hesitancy in signing me. I was pretty unfit because I'd had 3 weeks off and I'd just been drinking and partying and eating shit. And I was actually planning to go to South America with mates, so I was like trying to put on beach. I was doing beach weights, trying to put on muscle. So I was in terrible shape. So there was probably a little bit of hesitancy around my fitness and stuff. But I think JP trusted me, and he put me in, and then I played. I started the first game, played well, and then had some physical issues after that for a few weeks. And credit to Western Sydney and JP and all those guys at the time. They were amazing. They let me have a week off, where I could like relax my body. My groins had a lot of issues. Just I think from the sudden like 0 to 100 kind of thing. So yeah, they helped me so much. They gave me that freedom to have a week off and do what I needed to do and come back. And I think mentally I needed some welcoming back into the professional environment. I needed a chance to adapt back into that sort of headspace, and they gave me that space. So yeah, that was really I actually really appreciated that. I probably never got to. I don't know how much I actually expressed to them that at the time, but yeah, it was pretty good.
Now, your final club of your career was Incheon United in South Korea. I won't ask you how that move come about because, as you said, your memory's pretty bad. But I will ask you, you spent your whole professional career in Australia, and obviously, like I don't need to say it, Australia and South Korea are very different countries, different climates. They speak a different language. So when you first got over there with the weather differences, with not many people speaking English or English well, did you find it hard to adjust? And was there any cultural shocks, aside from that you had?
Yeah, that was a very difficult experience in terms of like just little things. Like you can't even use Google Maps. Like I'd search for, I don't know, some kind of food shop on Google Maps, and it would take me somewhere. I'd drive there and be like, I don't know, music shop or something, and just be like, what is going on? Like there's so many differences between Australia and Korea that it's pretty amazing, because I always explain it like this, that I think most countries around the world follow America, right? Like they watch American TV, listen to American music, all that kind of thing. So there's this sort of understanding between people when they go to other countries. It's like, a lot of people speak English, a lot of people know the same famous people, and you sort of speak a little bit of the same language. But in Korea, they've got their own film, they've got their own music. Barely, out of this might be wrong, but from my experience, the least amount of English speakers that I've seen in a country. So it was really quite difficult. You go to try to do groceries somewhere, the people might actually, there's no English, or maybe they're just saying they don't speak English, I don't know, but they're not helping you, So it's like the stuff outside of the field was quite difficult, but then it rolls into the field stuff, because there's all this stuff about, like, you can't, if the coach says something, you can't argue with it, you can't say your opinion. If the president is saying something, then that's how it is. Like there's a lot of that kind of thing, hierarchical stuff in their culture, that obviously flows into the football side of things as well. So yeah, it was an experience. It was an experience, and again, like it made me have to grow and adapt, and learn how to still be a player in an environment where, like, it was very different, right? Like, because in Argentina, it felt like, okay, you just learn the language, then you're sort of there. Like you understand each other. This was foreign. This was very foreign to me. So it was difficult in its own way.
Now, I've interviewed a couple of Aussies from different levels, but sometimes ALeague, who's gone over to Asia, whether it's South Korea, Japan, even Malaysia. And one thing they all sort of have in common when they talk about Asia is they talk about the training and just how hard they go and just how intense the training is. So was that your experience at all in South Korea? And was it as crazy as what people say training-wise and strictness-wise?
We there's 2.5, 3 hour sessions, stuff like that. Some days you're in the club the whole day. Like you go in the morning, train in the morning, stay at the club, all day, whether you have lunch together, then you might have to just stay there and who knows, do a gym session, then you might train again on the field. Crazy. They've obviously got such a military influence in their training. But yeah, it's a weird one. It's Asia is I guess lots of places, lots of different cultural places can affect people differently, but it seems like one where you can be a really good player and still go over there and like for one reason or another, if you're not respectful or if you're not on time or if you're not willing to adapt the way you play or train, you might not even be able to show that. I sort of said this in the post, that you might not even get the chance to show that you're a good player. Like they can, those places I've seen personally, like in front of me, I've seen them write a person off completely, not just like, oh, for today or for this week, but one incident, go, that's it. Like you're never playing here, or I'm never going to look at you with respect ever again. Like I've seen that happen. So you have to be really aware, self-aware, socially aware.
Now, the K-League's not really one that's streamed too much in Australia, or it might be, I just don't know where to find it. So I don't think
Yeah,
I've really watched much of you play except for highlights and stuff when I was doing research for this video. So how do you think you
yeah,
actually played in South Korea? I know it must have been difficult, as you said, like a lot of people don't speak English well. I know there are foreigners who
yeah,
can speak English, but when you're a midfielder, especially, I think communication is very key. So if you're not able to
yeah.
communicate, it might affect your game. So how do you think overall you played when you were in South Korea?
Yeah, different challenges, right? Probably played my best football there, I think. I think the I guess the game suited me in some ways, like the style of play suited me in some ways. Um, and again, I think like you as a foreigner, you go into the okay, like my position in Victory is kind of the tacit position, right? Is like, oh, it's a young player, doesn't really need to, he just needs to come in and do a job and doesn't need to really, be the best player on the ground or the biggest lead or anything like that. And then I get to Western Sydney, it's a bit like, oh, you're a bit older, probably should lead a little bit, have some experience, should be a bit more of a main player and should be starting each week. And then you go to Korea and Incheon, and it's like you're one of 3 or 4 foreigners, and you've got to be the ones that are essentially making the difference in the game. And I felt like that responsibility helped me do that. And I think that I probably played my best football there, yeah, in a weird way, because yeah, lots of different challenges for lots of different reasons, like we spoke about. But yeah,
Now, that was your final club in your professional career, and you did walk away from the game at such an early age. And I remember there was a big post about it, and a few people were shocked, but I'd imagine that would have been a pretty long decision for you to actually make. So, when was the time you knew that you were going to walk away from football? And have you had any like doubts or regrets ever since?
no, I can answer that pretty quickly. No doubts or regrets at all. Like, um, I, yeah, it was a long decision. It wasn't something that was easy. I remember literally sitting in my little apartment in Korea, crying to myself because I was like, oh, this is it. Like, this is now. It's not a year off. Like, I'm done. And basically, what I did was I break it down. I asked myself 3 questions. One, am I enjoying it? Is this something, and I do this for everything. Like, if I'm doing something, I ask myself these 3 questions. One, am I enjoying it? The answer is no in that. I'll move on to the second question. Am I learning something? Am I growing? I felt like football in general, like, yes, I was growing in understanding how to live in Korea and how to and play in Korea, but I felt in a general sense of soccer or football, no, I'm not developing as a player or learning new things and gonna become a much different player than what I am now. I didn't feel like that was happening for me. And 3, is it a necessary step for me to get to somewhere else? So that's 3 questions. Like, am I enjoying it? Am I growing or learning something, or is it a necessary step for me to get to somewhere else? And all of those things were no. Like I wasn't enjoying it any more than I would enjoy playing MPL here with my mates or playing five-a-side around the corner from my house at all. Like no, probably less. I was enjoying it. 2, yeah, like I said, I didn't feel like I was growing. And 3, like there was nothing that was coming from that I needed to. It wasn't like in Argentina where, you know, it was difficult times and this kind of thing. I'm away from home and my family and all this, but like I'm trying to get to somewhere with this. It was like I'd already gotten to done what I thought I wanted to do with the game, that kind of thing. Obviously, there was other things. Obviously, there's always going to be things that you wish you did. But even if I won, I remember listening to Michael Jordan talk, and he goes, "I just wish we went for one more." Like you're always going to have that. There's stuff that you can't achieve, right? But no, it was a difficult decision, but 100% the right one for me. Like I had spent, I sort of recounted it with like my mate Jake in one of his interviews where I started to get like real bad anxiety, like physical stuff, not mental. I wasn't thinking about anything. I wasn't worried about nothing, but I was getting these like physiological feelings. And I just felt like that was like now a bodily symptom of me like knowing that I'm doing something that I don't want to be doing. Like I'm on the wrong path. And it was like my body telling me like, this is not your path anymore, and you need to make a serious, like a difficult decision here. Because it's so difficult. Like fuck, I played since I was 4 years old. It's all I've ever known. But I'm so glad I did it because now I'm doing the coaching stuff. I'm doing an academy called Beyond Technique Football School. And my passion for that, all the passion that I had for playing football has now gone into, it's like gone into this coaching side and like coaching kids and developing kids. When I really thought when I was finishing that I'm probably not going to go too much down the soccer route anymore. But this was like just perfect segue, and now I absolutely love it. I wake up, I watch videos, I read books and watch documentaries and blah blah, trying to like work it out, you know, how to be the best coach or best junior coach in the world. So I've got that like aspiration back that I had probably lost with as a player. I didn't have that anymore. Like, how good can I be? Where can I get to with this? I was sort of just going, okay, money's good. I understand how to play now. Like I'm comfortable. It's not easy. It's not like it's easy, but it's like it's familiar. It's comfortable. Like I want to be like growing. I love the feeling of growing and feeling like, can I get there? Can I get there? Can I get there? This is difficult. I know I failed. Now I'm making it. Oh no, I failed again. Like I want that feeling. And I just felt like I lost that as a player. And I just sort of got complacent in like a complacent place, you know?
Now, a lot of professional athletes kind of have similar sentiments when it comes to retiring, that they say they kind of learn a lot about themselves as a person when they retire and they don't have this full-time thing anymore and all this sort of thing. So what did you personally learn about yourself after retirement? And what do you think, as you said, you've been playing football since you were 4, what do you think some of the biggest differences in everyday life is when you're not a professional athlete and you don't really have to look after yourself to the extreme?
Oh yeah, mate. Well, lots of different things, like little things, right? Like there's stairs here at my work, and if I was walking up and down those stairs, I would be thinking, if I was still playing professionally, I'd be thinking like, is this good for my legs? Like tomorrow, am I going to be able to run as much as I need to run, and that kind of thing? Or I had a chai this morning and had a little marshmallow on it. Like there's no way I would have had that marshmallow if I was playing professionally. You know, like just like crazy shit. Like the amount of like detail that you're constantly thinking about. Have I walked too much today? Have I eaten the right things? Like have I slept the right hours? Now, like I've always had problems sleeping. Now if I'm having a bad sleep, it's like, oh well, I'll just have a bad sleep. I don't need to train tomorrow and perform and that kind of thing. So yeah, lots of little things like that. But I think what I learned from coming out of the game is that like I still very much have that kind of that fiery kind of uh, like that kid that wanted to be a professional footballer and had big dreams and that kind of thing. I'm still very much that kid. Just now it's like for different things. And I think I am like that for lots of different things, which makes it hard for me. Like a lot of people don't have a passion in their life, rather don't know what they love doing or what they want to do and whatever. But for me, the difficult thing is I've got so many things I want to do. So it's hard to sort of like, you can't do everything, right? So yeah, I guess that's what I learned.
And final question. I know this is probably a bit of an open-ended question that would be pretty hard to answer, but looking back at your career, is there any particular moment that sticks out in your mind that you go, okay, this is it. This is what, I was dreaming about when I was a kid. This is my favorite moment of my whole career.
I mean, winning the league was, yeah, there's a photo of myself, Jason Guerra, and Costa Barbarouses after we've won the A-League. And it's a photo of like the three of us walking. We've got our medals on and our caps on. And it was a weird one because like I didn't play too much that year. I wasn't like a regular starter, but I played in a lot of the crucial games. I didn't start in the final, but I came on. Like, part of you would think that like, you'd be disappointed that you weren't starting in that, and you wouldn't feel like you influenced much. But I actually felt like I influenced enough that I was comfortable to feel like, fuck, I've done well here, and feel a part of it. And yeah, in this photo, it's like I've got my arm on Jason like that, and I think the feeling was like, fuck, like we did it, kind of thing. As like young kids, like that, like I said, you have that feeling of like, oh, am I gonna make it? Now I'm doing better. Oh, now I've played shit. Oh, now I'm doing better. And this person likes me. Oh, but this coach doesn't. And this like up, down, up, down, up, down, and this like slow gradient, like slow trajectory where you get knocked down, you go back up, get knocked down. There's always that like chance that you're actually not going to make it. And that thing like, fuck, maybe I actually won't make it. But then this was a moment of like, oh, now I've actually done something. Like I've done something. It's like it's written down, and it's in the records. Like I've done that now. So it was like this kind of feeling. Maybe that, yeah, maybe that moment that day.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Rashid. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Thank you for watching. This video is sponsored by Arrow Sport. Go to the link in the description, and the friendly team at Arrow Sport will help you create your own football dream jersey. Whether it's starting from scratch or using one of their many templates on their website, creating a jersey with Arrow Sports is easy, and prices start from just $50. Go to www.arrowsport.com.au and make your football kit dreams become a reality.